Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior and welcome back to another Mortal Kombat 11 video. In today's video, I wanted to give you all an in-depth breakdown and analysis of Robocop. Since he is a guest character from the 1980s, I am aware that there are many of you who are somewhat unaware of who Robocop is and what really made him an icon of the 80s. So in today's video, I'll be talking about the origin of Robocop, what's happened to him in the first movie, and a brief somewhat summary of 2 and 3, as they aren't really that good and don't really do much for his character. I'll also be talking about what will be the future of the series, his somewhat iconic enemy, and what is his relationship to the Terminator, as I'm super well aware of that Robocop Terminator trailer that recently dropped. Now to really talk about Robocop, I must first set the scene for what the universe is. You see, the Robocop universe isn't set in the present time of the film's release in 1987. Instead, it's set in a far-off dystopian chaotic future, where crime is rampant, media influence and corruption is a way of life, and it's where mega corporations hold more control over the city than the police ever could. It is a rather bleak world for everyone in the universe. That is, unless you are at the very top of the mountain, which is usually made up of bodies and blood money. So this being said, let's talk about how Robocop came to be. Now, Robocop wasn't always Robocop. You see, his real name is in fact Alex Murphy, and Murphy, before becoming Robocop, was an exceptional officer of the law and a family man, something that really kept him going on a day-by-day basis. Although we do not know much about Murphy's family life, we know that he loved his wife and shared a very special relationship with his son, as the two would watch a show called TJ Laser together. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because Murphy adopted TJ Laser's gun twirl, something that he learnt for his son to impress him. Now, Murphy was an exceptional officer and was eventually transferred to a new police department, that being the Metro West precinct that was located in what is now known as Old Detroit. But things would quickly go south, as Murphy was killed on his first day. You see, Murphy alongside his partner Ann Lewis were assigned a job of stopping a robbery in progress, but little did they know that the bank robbers were the Bowdicker Gang, a small group of notorious criminals that showed absolutely no mercy for anyone in their way. They even happily kill their own if it means getting the job done. Now, though Murphy and Lewis were able to track them down to their hideout, this would be where Murphy was gunned down and effectively killed by the Bowdicker Gang. Now, upon being declared dead, his body would be taken by the mega corporation known as Omni Consumer Products, to which his body was then used for the Robocop program. It took a considerable amount of time to get Robocop online, but once he was, Alex Murphy was effectively dead. There were only mere fragments of Murphy's memories left, and he was given 3 prime directives, the first being serve the public trust, the second protect the innocent, and the third is uphold the law. Now, there was in fact a 4th directive, but I will be touching on that later. Now, Robocop would be taken to the police precinct, where he would be stationed until he needed to take out a job. Now, due to his iconic look and appearance, he quickly gained the public attention, and thus because of this, did become a somewhat celebrity amongst the precinct. But things would quickly change. See, although Robocop was effective in his job, Murphy's memories started coming to the forefront, and after coming into contact with a member of the Bowdicker Gang, that being Emil, who immediately recognized Murphy, Robocop went on a mission of somewhat self-discovery, traveling back to his home and getting visions of his wife and son that he now knew he lost. And from here, it somewhat sets up a redemption arc for the character, as Robocop isn't Robocop anymore, he is Alex Murphy. So to serve out justice, he's able to track down the Bowdicker Gang, bust the drug deal, and take their leader Clarence to the Metro precinct. But what was quite a shock to Murphy here is that Clarence revealed the identity of his employer, that being a man by the name of Dick Jones. Now, Dick Jones works at Omni Consumer Products and is in second of command. So when Murphy learns of his identity, he infiltrates the facility and attempts to arrest him. But this is where the 4th directive I mentioned comes into effect. You see, Murphy isn't in fact allowed to attack or arrest any senior member of OCP. No matter how hard Murphy tries, he's ultimately unable to do this. An interesting fact about Dick Jones is that he hates the Robocop program. It in fact replaced his own crime fighting machine, that being the ED-209, a giant hulking machine that Jones does set on Robocop. Now, Murphy's barely able to survive, being gunned down by the ED-209. It almost seems like Murphy's going to die, until his partner Lewis steps in and takes Murphy to a safe location. Here the two rehabilitate, and Murphy somewhat comes to accept his humanity, as well as the machine he's now become. But from what you can obviously tell, things weren't over quite yet. Due to the information that Robocop knew, Dick Jones knew that he needed Robocop eliminated, and thus set the Bowdicker Gang on him with some military grade high-grade equipment. But despite their incredible firepower, Murphy not only took out every member of the gang, but was able to avenge his death by killing Clarence, the man responsible for dealing the finishing blow. Now from here, Robocop would travel to the OCP headquarters and destroy a ED-209 with an anti-tank rifle. He would then enter the boardroom and would reveal to the rest of Dick Jones' colleagues that not only was Jones affiliated with the Bodicker gang, but he was in fact killing off other members of the board in order to see his own plan succeed. Now Jones would grab the head of the board and threaten to murder him if Robocop didn't back off and leave the facility. But it's here where the head of the board would fire him, allowing Robocop to kill Jones, as he was now no longer a part of OCP. So the first film concludes with Murphy avenging his death and accept his humanity despite his cyborg form, even referring to himself at the end of the film as Murphy. But in Robocop 2, they somewhat retcon a bit of this. You see, Robocop 2 and 3 don't do too much for Murphy as a character. It's more focused on Robocop and the action sequences that go on with him. The films, for the most part at this point, focus on OCP and how corrupt they are. Now I'll give you all a very brief summary of Robocop 2 and 3, as they certainly aren't as good as the first one, but the basic gist is, OCP has caught on to the popularity of Robocop and are in the process of creating a Robocop 2. Not only that, but they wish to create a new Detroit, that being Delta City. But every time they've attempted to recreate Robocop with someone else, it has failed nearly every time, with the subject either going insane or killing themselves. So they start exploring other options, and even the idea of using a criminal instead of an officer of the law. Now as this is all going on, Murphy's somewhat still attempting to reconnect with his family, but due to the public eye, it is not a really good look for him, as he effectively looks like he's stalking his family. And thus in the second film, Robocop kind of relinquishes his Alex Murphy persona, instead just becoming Robocop. Now from here, of course, he does fight more gangs and is dismantled at one point, but continues to do his job. Now during the end of the film, OCP are successful in creating their Robocop 2, but it happens to be the leader of a cult and drug ring that goes absolutely insane and is referred to as Robo-Kane. Not the best name in the world. Now Robocop and Kane do fight it out and Kane is defeated. But unlike the first film, Robocop doesn't really walk away with any memorable lines, and Alex Murphy kind of fades away from the Robocop persona. So in Robocop 3, he is more or less a bit of a hollow shell. Now Robocop 3, much like 2, doesn't really do anything for the character. If anything, it tailors more towards the conflict that OCP has going on, as they are evacuating the residents of Old Detroit in order to build Delta City. And due to what OCP is doing, it goes against Robocop's prime directive. So he does turn against OCP. Now from here, things get very silly with jetpacks and samurai yakuza ninja cyborgs, and overall Robocop 3 is a very underwhelming ending to the trilogy, once again doing nothing for Alex Murphy's character. So of the brief summary of 2 and 3 I've made here, which you can probably tell I didn't have much fun watching whilst prepping this video, the big question is right now, what exactly happened to Robocop after this point? Well, Robocop landed 2 animated shows. The first was Robocop the Animated Series, created in 1988, and Robocop Alpha Commando, created in 1998. Now from here, Robocop kind of faded from the public eye. He was no longer really a part of pop culture, and they even tried to revitalize the series in 2014 with a reboot. Now despite the film being directed by Neil Blomkamp, the film did receive fairly negative reviews, and fans didn't really like the whole redesign of the costume, with it taking on a black and red color palette opposed to its original silver and black design. So from here, a lot of people start to ask what's exactly happening with Robocop. Well, the series is in fact getting a sequel. The film right now, referred to as Robocop Returns, will be a direct sequel to the very first film, thus ignoring 2 and 3. The original director and actors will be returning to reprise their roles to create a somewhat true sequel to possibly finish the series. The details are somewhat scarce right now. Now let's briefly touch on Robocop's enemy. Outside of the obvious street crimes that do go on, the main antagonist of the Robocop series is in fact the company that built him, OCP, as they are responsible for causing a lot of stress, pain, and death through the creation of Delta City, and being the mega corporation that created the Robocop program, the ED-209s, and Robo-Kane. Let's talk about the iconic ED-209, as it is also in Mortal Kombat Aftermath. But as I mentioned, well, the ED-209s were created by Omni Consumer Products, with Dick Jones at the helm. At the time, they wanted to create a cybernetic unit that was strong enough to enforce the law and basically set Detroit straight, as the crime levels of the city were exceptionally high. And the ED-209 seemed to do the job for the most part. It was ferocious, intimidating, and was really to the point, so it seemed to be a success for the most part. But the one big issue with these units is that they had a horrible habit of malfunctioning, something that you do see in the first Robocop film film where it kills an innocent man. Now the ED-209s are heavily armored and are extremely difficult to kill. It took 2 shots from a Cobra cannon before it could be destroyed. So these things are built to last. Now the next unit we're going to talk about is in fact Robocop, who could be seen as Robocop 2.0. Now although the Robocop 2 unit was designed to protect Delta City, they just so happened to have put in the mind of a drug lord, that of course being Kane. Now unlike Murphy, who ultimately had restrictions with what he could do and what he couldn't do, Kane for the most part was seemingly given full control of his actions, working alongside OCP in order to fulfill his own goals. Now in the second film, we quickly see that Robocop does have superior armor to that of the ED-209, being able to take multiple shots from a Cobra cannon and still hold his own ground. On top of this, he has claw-like hands that can easily crush or maim anyone it touches, a plasma torch, and of course a minigun in his left hand. It made him a formidable force. Robocop was only able to stop him from finding a weak spot in his armor and tearing out his brain. So the Robocop 2 unit was definitely a formidable force. Now of course in Robocop 3, we were introduced to a new type of cyborg, that's being the Otomo. Now unlike the OCP unit, the Otomos were extremely agile and were seen as tactical formidable adversaries, with every strike having a purpose behind it. So the Otomos were very precise when they attacked. Now the Otomos were extremely hard to kill, being able to repair themselves if they took a devastating blow. But if the Otomos sustained too much damage, they could most definitely be destroyed, which is ultimately what happens in Robocop 3. And of course the final big adversary that we know Robocop has gone up against, and he does feature in Mortal Kombat 11, Terminator, which actually brings us up to our next section now. What is the Robocop's relation with the Terminator? Because the two have been marketed together recently a lot by NetherRealm Studios. So what is the connection? Well, outside of both of them being set in very dystopian future, the pair were huge icons in the 80s, being pioneers of the sci-fi genre alongside other sci-fi horror and action franchises like the Predator and Alien series. Robocop and Terminator were a key part of that era, and due to the similarities they shared of a dystopian future and the mesh of man and machine, it seemed like a natural fit, but at some point the two would clash, and we got that in 1992. Although it wasn't in film 4, Robocop would have a crossover series with the Terminator, courtesy of Dark Horse Comics. This 4-part series would be written by Frank Miller and was extremely successful on release. It was a fun crossover series that fans of both franchises had in fact been asking for, due to the positive reception that the comic got. 1 year later, in 1993, a crossover game would be made by Virgin Games. It was also a very loose spin-off of the Frank Miller crossover comic. Both franchises have a history with each other and have been tied very deep into pop culture. So that being said, that is it for Who is Robocop. I hope you have enjoyed this video and learned more by doing so. Robocop is a very old character, so I understand why a majority of my audience may not in fact be too familiar with him or really get what he's all about. I can't personally say that the Robocop franchise is one I personally hold dear, but I can definitely see why it's held up to rather high acclaim. The first film is extremely good, and although it doesn't look as clean and as polished as modern day films, there is a lot of charm to the film. Honestly, the first film does somewhat stand the test of time. I'd say at your own risk watch 2 and 3, but they definitely aren't quite as good as the first one. But yeah guys, this sums up everything I wanted to say here. I hope it got you up to date with Robocop, what he's all about and what exactly is happening in his universe, what is the future of the franchise, as well as his relationship with the Terminator. But yeah, that's everything I did want to say here. This video should be going out on the day of Aftermath, so in saying that, I hope you're all having fun playing him. So before this video wraps up, if possible guys, let's try getting it to about 500 likes, and also do not forget to tick that bell, as it will keep you up to date with the channel. So now, as always guys, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I'll see you all next time.